Living in the Past is a Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth, and Everlook Broadcasting production. This is Living in the Past, your Everlook Broadcasting Company weekly show about all things Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth. Today is Friday, December 1st, 2023, and I'm Dan, your host for the next hour. This is it, the home stretch for the year of our Lord 2023. We're almost out of it and into another arbitrary set of new months with one more increment on them. Happy days. It's a great time for food, fun, and spending time with the people you care about, and don't you forget that. Zappo was oddly enough not in the building when I snuck in earlier. He left a few of the offices and studios open, and most of them are filled with winter's veiled decorations that haven't been hung up just yet. If looks are anything to be believed, Everlook Broadcasting and its offices are about to get a heck of a lot more festive for the month of December. And speaking of getting Everlook Broadcasting a bit more festive, we've already switched in our first of many Winter Veil segments, with thanks and appreciation on that going out to our voice actors for getting the work done to record them, Volca getting them edited together for full release, and the writing team for getting it all on paper to begin with. We have more coming, too, in addition to more lorebook readings, new racial musical segments, and more. And good news on top of all of that. The thing that's been hotly requested over the last month or so and what we've been working on is an Everlook Broadcasting YouTube channel. That means you can now catch every episode of this show, Living in the Past, as well as our lorebook readings and any other shows that eventually pop up here on the station. We can't guarantee that new show episodes are going to be up right away after they're live, but we will do our best to get them posted as quickly as possible. You also might be asking yourself, why not just use the regular Turtle Mysteries of Azeroth YouTube page? There's a reason behind that. But without going into too much detail, the content we'll be posting here on the Everlook Broadcasting YouTube channel is entirely safe from any kind of takedowns. It's purely original content generated from those of us here at Everlook. On the rare occasion, the main Turtle YouTube page has gotten hit with takedowns. So, to protect the content our team has created, to make sure it's a permanent archive, the Everlook YouTube channel will exist on its own. Look forward to links being posted to the official Turtle Discord for the Everlook Broadcasting YouTube page here later today. Continuing mini discussion points, as this is kind of what the first segment here has turned out to be. I didn't do this on purpose, by the way. I just had a lot of smaller things I just needed to get through today. Vrograg brought to my attention a bit of an issue right now with a few different mobs across the rating spectrum. Here's the shorthand list before we go into some detail. Sartura's ads currently cannot be stunned. Major Domo's squads can't be polymorphed. Fairlena's ads cannot be stunned or counterspelled. And apparently the beetle spawns during Kel'Thuzad in Naxxramas can't be shackled. Again, thank you to Vrograg for bringing these issues to my attention. He was a little nervous about, okay, is this breaking the fourth wall a little too much? But I assured him, this is fine. This is why I do this. This is the best use of this time, getting information out. So thank you to him for that. I always do love being able to use this platform to spread useful information. So let's go over these in just a little bit of detail. Major Domo's ads not being sheepable. Currently, it's a little rough, but in all honesty, they're still pushovers. Hunters kiting the melee ads on top of nearly any even moderately geared tank being able to hold on to one of them, renders this a bit of a road bump at worst. Groups should be fine. If they're undergeared, if a group is undergeared, there might be an issue, but even if you've ran Molten Core a couple times, you're going to be okay. Now, from here on, though, things get a little more iffy. Sartura and her group of spinning nerds in AQ40 are a bit of a bigger issue, as stunning them is at times the only way to stop them from charge spinning the backline and asking the question if a healer will it blend. I hope some of you get that reference. I really hope some of you get that reference. The bright side is, apparently this isn't affecting Sartura herself, who can still be CC'd into oblivion. Get the ads handled fast, and you're in the clear. Now, moving on to Naxxramas. For Fairlena's ads, while they don't necessarily do the most damage, a solid silence is critical to getting them into position to stopping Fairlena's enrage. So I'm not sure what the most efficient workaround on this one might be. Also, I was never able to confirm with Vrograg if this is just a counterspell immunity or if it's a immune to all silences or interrupts across the board. Because if it's just counterspell doesn't work on them, okay, well, rogues have kick, warriors have pummel, you should be fine. But if it's an issue where they cannot have their cast interrupted in any way, if they're not close enough to stop Fairlena's enrage, that could be a problem. She is not necessarily a pushover. So that's something that we might want to just keep tabs on. As for Kel'Thuzad's bug buddies, because here's some context, by the way. I haven't done AQ40 or Naxxramas on Turtle yet. I did it in Vanilla in Classic, but I don't know how accurately that has been translated on here. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt. But I am assuming that, like on Vanilla, the little beetles there for KT didn't have tiny health pools. They were actually pretty chunky. So if they're running around chomping on things and they cannot be shackled, what exactly are you doing to stop them? They can't be sheeped. They can't be feared. I'm not sure exactly what you do other than pull extra tanks and slow the fight down even more. Kel'Thuzad is already a long fight. Kel'Thuzad is already an absolute just monster of a fight. It's a long one, and it's detailed. So, pulling extra people off of KT to handle those mobs, who are then also going to be taking damage, and slowing the fight down even more, that doesn't feel great. That really does not feel great. And it's phase 3 where you have to burn him. You have to burn him in phase 3. So I don't know how legitimate of an option that's going to be. So we'll see about that. There very may well be an easy solution to the issue, but previously shackling them was the best option by far. So we'll see about that. Vrograg, in addition to giving me a heads up on these issues, assured me that they're already in the bug tracker, which means hopefully the Turtle team is looking into these odd issues that have sprung up with the previous patch. Give them time, patience, and continue submitting bug tracker reports on these as you encounter more or new issues, please. I'd love to know what you all think about this issue. Is it just a minor inconvenience, or is it something more serious? Again, I haven't ran AQ40 or Nax yet on Turtle, so I'm not sure how the exact tuning is for those raids compared to my experiences during in Vanilla Classic line up. Again, feedback greatly appreciated on these kinds of things. Lastly, before we get into our first break and dive into some very real and absolutely true lore, wink, on the worldwide craze known as Shellcoin, a few quick goodbyes to some of my good friends over at Pugonomics. Toll, Kuru, Deathshots, and Toria have all stepped away from the server, An unfortunate turn of events for everyone who knows them. Because of that, Pugonomics has closed down operations as of earlier this week. We'll miss all 4 of you here on Turtle. The brain trust between those 4 moving on is a massive loss for our community at large. I'm sticking around, of course, and I'll be looking into where I'll be rating here coming up in the near future. Now then, let's get the energy high up today. Tell me, do you like ska? Well, good, because, you can fill in the rest of the joke from here. We're going to open with a band from right here in Boston who started their careers at a local dive bar north of the river called the Middle East, which, unfortunately, just closed earlier this year. It's the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones with The Impression That I Get. And after that, a cover by Real Big Fish of Take On Me with those horns as powerful as ever. Shellcoin's magnificent start, in full story form, coming up after this. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. Slipping in a bonus track there from Real Big Fish, Beer. Incredibly boppy, high energy ska tracks that absolutely help set the mood. Later on, we're going to reach a little deeper back into the early 90s with more swingy, heavier ska tracks. But first, let's talk Shellcoin. A lot of people regularly ask, what is Shellcoin? Or how is Shellcoin? But never a who is Shellcoin. How did this enigmatic and most likely scamtastic currency come into play? What made it a staple of shills and scammers the likes over for both factions? Let's talk about that. When you hear the term Shellcoin, do you think shells? Is that what comes to mind first? Because that's good. That's exactly where it started. The very concept of a shell coin started out with shells. Shells on a beach. They gather up, they collect. But what do you do with them then? There are shells everywhere. Every single ocean has ocean life that eventually turns into shells. But no one's gathering them up. They're just going out there. They're wasted. They're sitting out there doing nothing. Except when some brilliant entrepreneurs decide to take advantage of the situation. Everyone has certainly heard of seashells. No, I already screwed it up. She sells seashells by the seashore. But what seashells is she selling? That was really hard to say. I didn't expect that one to be that difficult. I didn't expect that to be a challenge. Whew. Back on topic. If she's selling those seashells, is she selling them for the right price? Where is she sourcing said seashells? And how is she actually setting her price in the first place? There's clearly profit to be made here. And any reasonable entrepreneur would have picked up on this by now. Which, thank goodness, someone did. When you take those seashells, you take them, and you say, we can make a profit off of them. You have to then ask, who is the profit coming from? Because you can't just grow money on trees. Money has to be squeezed out of people. So therein lies the first real conundrum. The makers of Shellcoin said, we have all these shells, and we can pretend that they're coins. But how do we attach that value to them? Now, many people are going to say, oh, they did some research into how old the shells were or how fancy the shells were, or they're making something out of the shells. That's all. Everyone's lying to you. People are lying to you on that front. That is not true. What happened is they made it up. They just made the price up. Because in the end, currency is just arbitrarily associated value. And you can do the same thing with random objects. So again, you have all of these shells, these so many shells that are just washing up on the beach, and you're gathering them, and you're saying, oh, but they have this value now. That's as simple as it needs to be. And thus, the very beginnings of shell coin formed. Shells suddenly had this arbitrary value that as more people bought into it, value would go up. Numbers go up. But how do you make those numbers go up? Even if you have that associated value that you've arbitrarily associated with the shell, or the shell coin as we're now calling it, how do you actually get it out there to people? Well, the first thing that you do is you get into those towns. You get into Goldshire. You get into Stormwind. You get into Razor Hill. You get into Orgrimmar. You get into the markets of the everyday peoples of Azeroth. And you say, hey, would you like some shell coin? It's probably more complicated than that. Let's be honest. It's probably more complicated than that. However, if you're not getting into those markets, if you're not going where people are going on a daily basis, that's going to be a big mistake. You want to make sure you're getting into people's faces. You want to make sure you're actually talking to people on a regular basis. And even if it's just mentioning the name shell coin, that's building brand recognition. And that's how you establish brand value. You may not necessarily be able to say, hey, this is worth 87 gold here. You should definitely give me 87 of your gold for a shell. That takes time. That's not as easy. But certainly you're getting somewhere. Now the big question is, now that you've established your marketplace and you're trying to sell the shell, that actually worked. I did not plan that, by the way. That worked out much better than I thought it would. Now that you're selling it, what do you, A, do with the money, and B, how do you actually make money off of it? Because let's say I buy a shell worth 80 gold, and then I want to sell it for 87 gold, which is what its current value is, not the value of when I bought the shell. You're out 7 gold. That's tough. That math doesn't work out well for you. Are you building interest in some kind? Unfortunately, the banks of both Stormwind and Orgrimmar don't have a concept of interest over time, so that's not happening. Where is your money coming from? And the fact of the matter is, the secret of it is you get other people to buy shell coin to pay for other people's shell coin. Now, you may be telling yourself, that sounds like a pyramid scheme. You're right. Yes, that's correct. The other question you have to answer is, how do you make money off selling shell coin? Again, there's no compound interest here going on. There's no potential investment opportunities. There is no stock market, thank goodness. So how do you make your money? Let's say you're someone who has risen through the ranks of shell coin to really sell that shell. How do you get your money out of it? And it's actually really simple. You just take the money and leave. Let's say you've sold, 7,000 shells worth of shell coin. And you have a lot of money on your person. And people are starting to ask, hey, I want to sell my shell coins now. Then you just leave. You go away where people can't find you. and then the money's yours. That's just how it works, I think. Make sure they can't find you, or where you've hidden your gigantic stockpile of gold coins. And that's how you win at a pyramid scheme. Happy days. With that being said, though, and moving on to our second break, would you like to know what isn't a scam? These next two artists, that's what's not. The first of this break is a band that helped define many of the early 90s ska terms and ideas, and was the most recognizable band on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack. It's Goldfinger with their absolute bop Superman. To round the break out, a little heavier on the horns, it's Saving Ferris with their cover of Come On Eileen. Don't be afraid to sing along to either. I'll catch myself doing it too, so there's no embarrassment around here. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. The energy that ska brings out is top tier. The vibes are real and the music really carries you along. With that being said, however, that's actually going to close it up for us today, as unfortunately I'm still a bit under the weather right now. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but there is a lot more gravel than normal, and it's a little painful. Better to close early and still get on the air than never get on the air at all. Next week, look for a full show. And sometime this month, I'd like to get another developer interview on the air, although I haven't decided on what subject just yet. Also, coming up next Wednesday, that's Wednesday next week, we're going to be doing a little bit of live trivia here on Everlook Broadcasting. We'll have a separate chat channel for this and a whole slew of questions ready for you all to have some fun with. So look forward to that. I'll be doing that live again on Wednesday, probably mid-afternoon Eastern, just to make sure a lot of the folks over in the European time zones don't have to stay up to absolute midnight or later to try and catch it. So I'm excited for that. I also, on a personal note, really love trivia. I love coming up with questions, so I'm very excited to actually get in, test your folks' knowledge, and see how good you are when it comes to your knowledge of lore and story here in World of Warcraft. Maybe a few other things. I don't think I'm going to keep it just to lore, but we'll see. Anywho, thank you all for taking the time to join me today. Our nostalgia continues even though today's broadcast is now at an end. And I hope you enjoyed the show here today. A huge thank you to the Turtle developers, moderators, staff, and volunteers. Without the entire team's hard work and dedication, we wouldn't have this station or server group. An additional thank you to the audio engineers and creators here for the use of their soundtracks they've created, which we use for segment transitions and intro audio. If you'd like to find out more about what I do, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedannation and my series, Ancient Lore, a recapture of the spirit of my original podcast, The Ancient of Lore. Also, as an additional reminder, the Everlook Broadcasting YouTube page is now live as well. It doesn't have a unique URL for it yet, but please look forward to a link in the official Turtle WoW Discord to that here tonight. Until next Friday, let's keep living in the past.